Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Creative Breakthrough Creative Chronicles. This is Shereen Kassam, aka the Funny Brown Girl. Hey, today I want to talk to you about creativity and a full-time job. One of the questions that I get a lot is, Shereen, how do I pursue my creative passions when I work a full-time job? Like, there's just not enough time in the day between going to work, going to the gym, taking care of my family, being in a relationship, being with my significant other, being with my children, grocery shopping, taking the car in for service, like all this stuff. Like, when am I supposed to find time to pursue my creative passion? And it is a very valuable or valid question because it's something I struggle with as well as a creative with a full-time job. And I actually posted a video a couple days ago chronicling, I probably should have named this segment something different than a word that I couldn't pronounce, but about my time as a stand-up comedian and the sacrifices that it takes to pursue one's passion. I'll drop that link in the show notes so that you can see what I'm talking about. But I've had actually a few interviews so far on this podcast, Creative Breakthrough, where we do talk to creatives who do have a full-time job. So for example, just last week and this week too, we're going to talk to Maza Mengiste, the internationally best-selling author of The Shadow King. And she talks about how when she started writing, and even now as a writer, she has a full-time job. And she had to learn to carve out time in the mornings. And that's what worked for her. She carves out about an hour before work, before she heads out, just to write. And it helps shape her whole week, because she even says it in the podcast, like she stopped going out late, she stopped getting drunk with her friends because she had something really exciting that she wanted to do in the morning, and that was to write. So when there's a will, there's a way, and you just have to figure out what works for you. Like for example, getting up early in the morning to write does not work for me because that's when I need to work out, because I can't do that when I get home from work, versus she probably does that some other part in her day. We also talked to JP Lambiase, who's a YouTube personality, a couple weeks ago, and he talks about how he was at a job where he had gotten to a level where the job was kind of running on auto run. Like it was kind of just going, he knew what he was doing, right? It had gotten a little too easy for him. And that's when he started working on learning how to use his camera and learning about lighting and production. And he started his YouTube channel while he was working a full-time job. And then he had to make a decision. Is he going to stay at his job, or is he going to continue making YouTube videos because his manager didn't like him doing both? And so sometimes that's a decision you're going to have to make as well. He was in a good situation though, where he was at a great job where things had just gotten easy for him. But he did make a conscious decision. Was he going to stay in that easy job so he could pursue his passion and his happiness, or was he going to go find something new? And so you saw the decision that he made in that podcast. We also talked to Tisa Hami, who was an internationally touring stand-up comedian, and she has 2 degrees. She has a bachelor's from Brown University and a master's from Columbia University. And she chose to go work at a company, at a job that just gave her more flexibility to do comedy. So again, she made a decision that she needed a full-time job. She needed benefits. She wanted the 401k. She wanted that structure, but also a company that would allow her to do stand-up comedy. And so sometimes you have to decide, like, what's important for you. Is your career important for you, or pursuing your passion? Because it is possible to do both, but you have to prioritize what's more important. And I'm going to get to that in a second. Another person that we talked to was Shereen Lada. And Shereen Lada has a master's degree as well. She has an MBA, and she pursues a really, really great position in advertising. She's been named one of the most strategic advertisers in Canada, in Toronto specifically. And on the side, she runs a YouTube channel. She's a dance personality, and that has over thousands of subscribers. I should have looked it up, but I think it was 220,000 subscribers. And she does both of them simultaneously. She actually says that neither one of them is her passion, neither one of them is her side hustle. They're both her career choices, and she makes it work. She makes it work because there's such a connection between what she does in her day job and what she does in her night job. And so it's really important to step back and say to yourself, what do you want in life? What do you want out of your creative passion? Is it a hobby, or is it something that you want to pursue more than a hobby? Because if it's just a hobby, you should be able to find the time to do it. And if you can't find the time to do it, then again, that's okay, because it's just a hobby, right? And a hobby is supposed to be something that you do when you have free time, like going to the gym or playing a pickup game of basketball. But if it's something that really makes you burn inside, makes your heart kind of skip a beat, then you've got to make that decision. And I'll be honest with you, I have that discussion with myself all the time because my ego gets in the way. Like, for example, I have a full-time job. I have a corporate job. I have 2 degrees. All my life, I've had jobs that required me to go to work at 9 a.m. and I would work till 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and then I would get dinner, and then I would work again until midnight. And that was just my day. And I thought that that was normal. I thought that when you graduate from school, you get into these high-position jobs, and that was normal. You had to work all the time, 24/7. You had to work weekends. And when I got to Amazon, which was my last job in Seattle, I just couldn't do it anymore because at that time I had already discovered stand-up comedy and I wanted to do it. And I remember going to an open mic and it was like 9 o'clock at night and I was about to get on stage. Like the guy said, "You're next." And then I got an email and it said, "We need you back at the office. Something came up." And I had to leave. And I remember thinking, this is not what I want in life. This is just not what I want to be doing. Like, I want to pursue stand-up comedy because it fulfills me. It makes up my heart skip a beat. Like when I talk about stand-up comedy, like my eyes light up. And that's actually been an issue when I do job interviews. But I had to make a decision. And so I moved to another company. And in that company, I get work-life balance. I get to leave at 5:30. I don't have to work nights and evenings. And if I do, it's like occasionally you work a weekend, like if something's due or something's coming up. But I made that decision. And sure, my ego gets in the way sometimes because I'll be at work thinking, I want to do more with my life. Like I want to be a vice president. I should be the CEO. I can do it. I know I'm capable of doing it. But then I have to scale myself back and say, yeah, but if you went and became a vice president or CEO, could you still do comedy? Could you still do your podcast? Could you still act? Could you still do radio? Like I have to make that decision and I have made it, but I'm happy and I get to do what I love to do. And so I say that to you because if you are struggling with a full-time job and your passion project, you've got to decide what takes priority. And I know a lot of you probably have families and children that you have to take care of. And I'm not saying like quit your job and go get a lower paying job. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm saying you could find a job or a career path that probably stimulates you and maybe pays you the same amount of money, but maybe the culture is more balanced to work-life balance. And maybe it's not going to advance your career into that next level that you want it to go to, but you've got to make that decision. What's more important to you? Shereen Latha was really good about talking about how she has an open relationship with the people at work. So they're aware that she does something at night. And I think that's super important that you have those open communications with your management team so that they know that you're not just going home and watching TV and that's why they can ping you and email you and call you because they think you're not doing anything else with your time. And I think a lot of times that's what happens. These people at the top think that we just go home and like sit around with our families and play board games. And some of us are like, no, that's not what we do. We actually have a life outside of work. So Shereen Latha talks about that. Actually, another person that we interviewed on this podcast was Abhi Verghese. Abhi Verghese also has an MBA. He got his MBA. He started working at Unilever. You know that was a really tough, grinding position post MBA. And he went in every day. He did his job. And then after work, he started filming a YouTube series. And then that became Brown Nation on Netflix. And then that became Metro Park on Eros. And that's how he started his career. He took his evenings outside of work and worked on his passion project. And then that became his full-time role. So what I'm saying to you is it's not going to be easy, but you've got to figure out how to carve out that time. So like, for example, one thing that I do sometimes is if I know my evening is full, like I have to go to prayers or I have a show or I'm going to meet up with friends, because you also don't want to miss out on those opportunities. I'm not saying you're supposed to cut out everything in life. I'll carve out my lunchtime because a lot of times at work we get an hour for lunch and everybody goes out for lunch, right? It's like a time to hang out with your coworkers and let loose and relax. And I'm not saying don't ever do that. I will do that, but I don't need to do that 5 times a week, right? So 1 day a week or 2 days a week, I carve out that time and I go to a coffee shop or I go to Panera's and I sit there with my laptop and I do my work and I try to see what can I get done in that hour and a half time period. So you can find those times in your days, especially if you're a salaried employee. You should be able to figure out where you can be more efficient and where you're able to find extra gaps of time to work on your passion project. So I hope that kind of helps you. I would really, really encourage you to go back and listen to the episodes on the Creative Breakthrough podcast of Shereen Latha, JP Lambier, Tisa Hami, Abhi Verghese, and just hear their stories. Even Maza Mengiste, which comes out this week. Hear their stories. Hear how they've been able to balance a full-time job and their creative passion. Because every story is different. Every journey is different. How we pursue our passions is different. Sometimes it works to carve out an hour a day. Sometimes it doesn't work to do that. And sometimes it works to carve out the weekends instead. And so you've got to figure out what works best for you. But I highly, highly say utilize your time. Like sometimes if you start tracking, just track for a day, track how you spend 24 hours, and you'll see like you spend a lot of time like on social media, Instagram, Facebook. You spend a lot of time watching YouTube videos, even watching TV, or even when you're traveling. Like I have a 30-minute commute to work and like a 45-minute commute back from work. What could I be using that time for instead? And Instagram actually does it. Instagram will now tell you how long you've been on their site for. See if you can cut all that back. using your commute times to listen to podcasts, listen to how-to videos, listen to other things that interest you that can help you push your passion forward. And you'll just start to see, like, once you start utilizing your time better and you have a better understanding of your time, you'll see that it's possible to pursue your passions. And I wish you guys all the best of luck. Email me if you have questions or even thoughts, or you can tell me, how did you pursue your passion with a full-time career? Let us hear it so that we can share it with our other listeners, and that maybe somebody will get some inspiration from how you've been able to balance your full-time career with your creative passion. Hey guys, it's Shereen Kassam. Now let's get ready for this week's guest.